Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir, the slides are visible.
I think the course is finite element laboratory. So you may ask me, or you can say that, sir, we can use any kinds of finite element software which are available in the market, or the free softwares which can be downloaded from NIST website, or any other like open source softwares. But my answer to that will be don't try to do that because every software deals with the different sort of problems. A finite element is a vast field. Finite element modeling, I think, started almost, I would say, minimum 100 years back. The basics 1980, not 100 years, 78 years back, 1950, 1960 onwards, people started doing the modelings. Initially, it was, very, like you have mainframe computers, which can take days to do the solving, but gradually things started moving faster. The evolution of electronics and the computing facilities ensured that it can be done over like 10 minutes to 1 hour's time frame. But anyway, I'm not going to go into details. Let me first cover what is actually finite element analysis. Everybody heard the term finite element analysis. It's actually any kind of real life problems, any kind of real life engineering problem. It can be, it can be divided into very small segments. I would say a small segment mean what should I say? Like if I ask you, like, can you do the simulation how aerodynamics? What will be the aerodynamics on a aeroplane? It is possible. Okay, it is possible to do the modeling using finite element, but you have to, you have to divide it into very small part. Maybe we are going to just model the wings or the air pattern when the wings are moving at a certain velocity. Okay, so those type of things is possible to do, and it can be done. The analysis can be done if you have a very sound knowledge in the mechanics of materials. So the mechanical behaviors, the thermal behavior, the fatigue, the creep, all the materials, mechanical properties, and mechanical behavior of materials. If you know, then only you can do the finite element analysis. And it's a model. Actually, finite element is a 3D geometry which you design, which you can draw, which you can take from some third-party software and then integrate with the finite element-based analysis finite element software, and then you can solve it. Okay, and the modern mechanical design, if you have any kind of 3D geometry, it actually has a lot of complications. It has very complicated shapes. Okay, so you cannot that's what I mean, that the aeroplane design, it's so complex in nature. You cannot completely take an aeroplane design and then start modeling it itself. So what people have done that they simplify the things. Okay, they will just model the wings or the air pattern of the wings, or the like the tail which are actually control the movement of the aeroplane. Okay, so those are the thing. Or maybe I would say a heat sink or a boiler. Okay, where actually there is the heat exchange happening. So only the surface they can model it. Okay, and it can be solved by existing mathematical tool, and also there are a lot of this software which are actually coming into play. It can do many different things. Like I'll give you an example. I'm going to confine my talk only on ANSYS, because ANSYS is not the itself the finite element software. There are other software which can do different things. Like in my PhD, I used to do a software which is known as Procast. Okay, you might not have the term Procast. It's a solidification software. So solidification software means what it does. If you pour a liquid metal, okay, any kind of liquid metal, it is gradually going to solidify, right? So it is going. There are solidification shrinkage. There is a coring phenomena. Okay, the cooling rate pattern. What will be the grain size? The microstructural evolutions. These are all can be modeled using a solidification-based finite element software, which is developed by ESI, which is known as Procast. So that is different, completely different thing. It is not related to you. But again, then there are the Abaqus. Okay, Abaqus does. Then there are COMSOL. COMSOL is mainly been used for modeling the like the degradation, the phase evolution, the hotspot in an electrode material for supercapacitor and batteries. So that's what I'm saying, that the finite element software, there are many different software, there are many different applications. So this is a vast field. We are going to talk mainly about the ANSYS for our the syllabus. Okay. What is basics? If I ask you what will be the basic fundamental aspects of a finite element software? As I said, that process can be divided into many models or small pieces. So we need to do some sort of meshing. What is meshing actually does? I mean, I would say that like in our human body, right? If we don't have any bone or flesh, okay. So what we have then? We have a skeleton, right? So if I pinch on your finger or pinch on your hand, and if you are free from bone and flesh, are you going to have any like feelings? Obviously, the answer will be no, right? If you pinch a human which is having only skeleton, the human will not going to respond, right? So that the bone and flesh actually, it has all the nerves, the bone, the arteries, the veins, which are connected to the neurons. So what it does actually, it sends the signals. Okay. So my point is here also the meshing. Whenever you do some sort of meshing, it actually integrates the whole body into a complete shape. So whenever you have some sort of inputs, if you give some sort of inputs to that nodes, to that mesh, it will actually communicate to the body, communicate to the whole body, and that's why then only it will respond. Anything happens to human, if you I mean, how do you feel a taste of any food? Like if you have all kinds of like sensing organs on our tongue, right? The sensing organ actually sends the signal, and then if is it salty or it's a sweet, anything. So similarly, any 3D body, if you have a meshing, and then the meshing, what it does, it creates a lot of elements, and the elements are connected with the nodes. So I'm going to show you. This is the 3D pattern. You can see here. This is a 3D pattern, and then right hand side on the top you see the meshings. So this network type, right? This is like a net shaped things. Okay, this is called meshing, and each meshing constitute one element. I'm just pointing my. You see the cursor here. This is one mesh. Okay, the triangular mesh, you can see all the meshes are interconnected. So this is all the mesh, and this is one element, and these each points are called nodes. I hope you understood what I'm trying to say. The whole structure is being meshed. This is one element, triangular element, and this point, individual, the connecting points are known as nodes. Okay, so meshing, what it does is creates a lot of elements, and then it creates a lot of nodes. So if you get some sort of inputs, you can see this is a simulation result. I don't know what exactly the simulation being done. I hope it is a deformation or some sort of the heat evolution in a body. You can see the different part of the body has different color. The color actually signifies the parameters which are you measuring. It can be a heat flux, it can be mechanical deformation, it can be total deformation. Any kind of parameters which you try to measure will give you the signal. Okay, so you can see this is some hot spots, hot zone. As you move along, you can get some like cooler zones. Maybe it's a deformation or heat source or heat sink. So my point is that until you do the meshing, you cannot solve any mechanical problem or any kind of finite element-based problem. So I think I have already mentioned that it was done almost 70 years back. I think you can read these slides if you're really interested to know the evaluation of finite element. Initially, it was I used some Rees method of numerical analysis. The very first paper came in 1956, some Turner and Clow, and then by the end of 70s, it's mainly been initially it was limited to mainframe computers owned by some government lab, national lab in USA and all over Europe, and then gradually it came to the laboratory, and a lot of new companies being set up like ANSYS, which are actually being done in a company in Pennsylvania, if I'm not wrong. And they started their business almost 1970s, I would say. Swanson, okay. I think scientist named Swanson, he started this business. So what is the capability of finite element analysis? What you can do using a finite element based model, what are the different things that you can do? So as you can see, there are many things you can do using a finite element software, but mostly I'm going to confine my the talk, or my syllabus is going to be thermal analysis and probably some sort of stress analysis. Okay, the remaining thing I'm not going to cover because it takes a lot of time, lot of effort, lot of practical knowledge, and lot of deliberations. Anything you need to learn, you need to know the basics, you need to know the software, you need to know how to solve the problem. There are many aspects of finite element software. So I think I don't know how much I will be able to cover, but again, thermal analysis and stress analysis, it is good enough for beginners. That's my suggestion. If somebody is interested, he or she can learn it after the syllabus is over. They can easily download the software, which is easily available in Software Vault, and then they can do all the practice. Okay, let's move size and shape optimization. You can see it's a given. Probably you can see this is some sort of angle irons thing, so angular body, where you can see a lot of holes are there, the opening. So you can do meshing. Actually, it's a cantilever beam is shown. You can see this is a fixed support here, and you're applying some sort of load. There's a hole inside. So what they have done, the solid body, first they have meshed it. So it's a approximation of the region of interest. This is the region of interest. So what are they going to do? They're going to mesh it. Either can be 2D or 3D element. Nowadays everything is 3D elements. No longer any 2D elements are being meshed. Everything now it's been done in 3 dimensions. Okay. Now what I was telling initially is mesh is connected with the associated nodes. So these are actually nodes, and this is called elements. Okay. So that's why it's called finite elements, because each elements are connected by nodes, and there are finite number of elements. Okay. This is one element. This is one element. This is another element. So you can see there are n number of elements within this confined body. And that is why it is called finite element analysis, because there are finite number of elements which you must solve. Okay. So what happens when you do finite element analysis? Each node, okay, each node is associated with some unknown variables. Okay. So the variables mean the input parameters. Okay. So if you need to know the heat flux or maybe the deformation of the cantilever, so you have to apply some sort of load, right? Why you have to apply load? Until you apply the load or the force, you cannot deform that cantilever beam. Now, what are the constant? The constant is the one side of that cantilever beam was fixed. So if you apply the load here, this is going to deform, right, towards bottom, because this side is fixed. Or there may be some sort of like cracks formation at the edges. So another point I did not say till now is that whenever you do some sort of finite element modeling, you always remember that it is associated with the materials which you are trying to model. From one material to another material, the behavior is going to completely differ. Let us assume if this material is stainless steel, so obviously the deformation phenomena will be different if it is a copper. Why is that? Because the properties of copper and the properties of stainless steels are different. The elastic modulus, the Poisson's ratios, the shear modulus, whatever, all the parameters are completely different of copper and stainless steel. So the material deformation behavior will also be different. Okay. So for the cantilever beam, the displacement in x and y direction would be unknown. This implies that every node has 2 degrees of freedom because there are 2 unknown parameters, and the solution has to be 2n degree of freedom. That is, n is the number of nodes. Okay. If there are n nodes, the degree of freedom is 2, and then you have 2n degree of freedom that has to be solved for each node. Now, what is that? And you give a displacement that is actually nothing but strain, and then which actually convert into stress. So that actually is the input parameter. So what are the parameters actually being involved for finite element analysis? The input parameters, which are known as pre-processing, then the solver, which is actually the matrix I mean, solver here actually, you have pre-processing parameter, that is the input parameters. You give those input parameters to that three-dimensional body, and then it is the software, what it will do, it will solve it. So the software, you can assume it's yourself. Okay, you can assume that yourself is the software. Why? Because if I give you a numerical and ask all the students, please solve it, you're going to take out your note, you're going to take out your pen and then solve it in a piece of paper, right? And then you're going to submit the answer at the end of the exam is over, right? So exactly the software does the same thing. We give some input parameters and then the software will solve by itself. And then it will give you the output, that is post-processing, okay? So that is what it constitutes a finite element-based software. You have input parameters, you have solver, and then output, that is post-processing. Meshing and all these things actually it's a pre-processing, because if you don't do the meshing, you cannot give the input parameters. Then they applying the boundary condition. What is boundary conditions? If I tell you integrate x square dx, so you will get some answer like 2x plus c. Okay. Now if I tell you integrate x square dx within a limit of 0 to 1, then your answer will be different. It will not be 2x plus c, it will be 2. Why? You apply the limit. Similarly, the boundary condition, you apply the limits. What are the limits here? Loads and constants. These are actually initial limits which you must apply. So you can give some number, maybe 400 Newton load. What is constraint? One end is fixed, another one is hanging, right? Or something like one parameter is insulated, right? One temperature, there is no adiabatic heat loss, there is no heat transfer with the surrounding. There are n number of constant you can give. There are n number of boundary condition you can give. So applying the boundary condition is very, very important. Then assigning material with mechanical and physical property. Why it is important? As I said, you cannot simply by blindly do any solve. You have to assign the material. Okay, from one material to another material, the results are going to differ. Ceramics will behave one way, metals will behave one way, polymers will behave another way. Okay, so that's how you have to solve. So actually, in any kind of analysis, any kind of software is actually mimicking the real life behavior, mimicking the real life constants. Okay. So this is actually a snapshot taken from ANSYS. You can see here, this is boundary condition. You have to give the control or load and fixture. You can see mesh is here, apply control. You can do the meshing, and then loads and fixture. You can do some fixture, pressure, force, gravity, centrifugal force. So these are all input parameters or pre-processing parameters which you must give before you go for solving. So pre-processing mesh. Mesh, I just mentioned, is a way to communicate the geometry to the solver, right? Because I pinch your finger or I pinch your hand, so the signal is going to go to your like neurons, the head. Or if you put your palm on a burning candle, you're going to feel the heat, right? So you will, the momentarily feel the heat, you will take care of the hand, right? Why it happens? Because the signal sends to your neuron to the head, and you feel that you're feeling hot, right? Your hand is going to burn. So the moment you feel burning sensation, you take out your hand. Similarly, the meshing is also the way to communicate with the solver or to the software. So meshing is very, very important. Okay, and if you have a better mesh law, you can more accurately do the solution. If your mesh is ugly or mesh is awkward, then the solution will differ, right? A good-looking mesh should have a well-shaped element, and the transition between density should be smooth and gradual. Let me show you how does it look. You can see here is one mesh, and there is one mesh. You can easily say this is a better mesh. There's a gradually the mesh size getting decreased, automatically is filling the whole geometry, right? As you can see, the mesh density is more higher, and then it's going down. But here you see a lot of big size mesh, small size mesh. So what is actually, it suggests that this is a bad meshing and this is a good meshing. Now you can ask me, sir, how I will identify that my meshing is good or bad. Now it is that the problem has been solved. It was earlier 1960s, 1917, when the software was not very up to date, people was not very sure. They used to do the manual meshing. So that particular time, it was the problem. Nowadays, every software does automatic meshing. You don't need to bother. It will give you the best fit. Okay, like in ANSYS, there is an automatic meshing. You don't even bother. It will give you the best mesh. Okay, so that problem has been sorted out. There are different types of mesh elements. You can see triangular 3-node, 6-node, 10-node. Then this is a tetrahedral element which is having 4 nodes, 10 nodes. So actually, there are now n number of elements, n number of nodes can be developed using the softwares. Okay. Now, what is the effect of mesh size? I say you can see that the model 1, it has some problem is being solved and it created von Mises stress around 18,000 psi. But you can see the distribution of the stress is not very uniform. You can see some hotspots and then the stress is pretty uniform over here. And this is the overall mesh. Now the same problem is being solved by using the mesh density or the element density and getting a better result. Now the stress von Mises comes is 13,000 psi. The mesh of model 2 is similar to that of model 1, but uses second order solid tetrahedral element. Initially it was some triangular element. Okay. Now it has using tetrahedral second order tetra elements. Now the mesh is also still 2 cores to model the stress distribution. So the answer is not very fine. Now let's look at the final one. This is the automatic meshing. This is the second order solid tetrahedral element has very fine mesh and then results when improved. Now you get a von Mises stress of 14,000 psi. So if you see that the meshing and the number of nodes and element do have a dramatic effect on the parameters which you solve or which you obtain. Okay, but again, as I said, these are the problem which was initially being faced or encountered by people working on finite element. Nowadays, this problem has been sorted out. But it's better to know, right? It can be beneficial later on. So this is actually a snapshot of all the 3 slides just I mentioned here. The better, so the results have been better here. Okay. Here actually you can see the difference. What is the difference? You can see here that the same geometry is being meshed by 2 different mesh pattern, and you can see the number of elements greatly differ here. 2,565 elements are here, whereas 66,000 elements are here. Okay, more than 6,000. So obviously, whatever Domani equation you solve is going to solve, the number of equations going to solve here much more higher than this. So if you solve here, you can predict that the result will be much more accurate in this case compared to this case, because the number of equations also involved is way higher than this. Okay, so that's why meshing is very important. Mesh quality, the ideal shape of a tetrahedral element is regular tetrahedron. I mean, you can read this. Sometimes irregular tetrahedron are created by the program. This distorted element have high aspect ratio. The aspect ratio that is too high causes element degeneration. So I would say that the meshing has to be very uniform in shape. And nowadays, this ANSYS automatically take care of these meshing patterns. If you have a complex geometry also, it will configure itself such that very fine mesh are there, wherever the complicated shapes are there, and then gradually get a better mesh. I think this is taken again from the ANSYS software, SolidWorks. It's from SolidWorks, and where you can do the meshing, you can see you can do mesh aspect ratio. You can find out this is a meshing. What are the aspect ratio of the meshes? You can use SolidWorks, which are also available. So remember, SolidWorks is not a finite element software. It is for the geometry drawing software or development of geometry. But you can create 3D geometry using SolidWorks or AutoCAD or Ploi. There are many softwares which are available, and those software can be utilized for drawing any complex geometry that can be imported into ANSYS. You can import that drawing into ANSYS and then you can solve it. So that is the good thing about ANSYS. Okay, you can draw the design using other software also. Here also, in another problem is given. You can see the transition. It's not. You have a hole here, right? So you can see the the elements close to that holes are very, I mean, it's not a very uniform transition, but you can see here, there is very uniform transition, very fine elements are here, and then gradually goes up, right? And it's very the number of elements is way higher than this. So obviously this is a better geometry, okay? And it will give you much more better results. So without mesh control and with mesh control, each is without mesh control, and this is with mesh control, you can see the results going to be different, right? Some hotspots are here, but it is more uniform here in this case rather than this here. This is difficult. The mesh. What are the mesh options? You can have mesh quality is the standard number of mesh. All these things can be available in the software. And automatic transition. You can see now everything is like so automatic. You don't need to bother about it. You do a machine and then automatically it converted into better mesh. So let's come to the basics first. Again, pre-processing, the only materials property that are generally required for an isotropic linear static are Young modulus. If you are dealing with any kind of mechanical problem, mechanical deformation, mechanical stress, any kind of mechanical problem of the material, what are the parameters you need? Young's modulus, shear modulus, Poisson ratio, yield strength, right? So these are the basic parameters of the materials you need. And then thermal expansion and simulation analysis required. If you have a steady state thermal problem, you require CTE value and then conductivity, thermal conductivity, CP, specific heat. So these are actually the initial parameter which you need. Now comes to the very, very important slide, I would say. Why do you think all this software license takes a lot of money from us? If a software give license to NIT Rourkela or any individual, it costs huge. The monetary part involved with this licensing is extremely high. So why do you think it is high? Because of the database which comes along with the software, okay? The materials database. So what is the material database? This is a amalgamation of all the materials property of different material. You can see here different steel, stainless steel, AI, different grades of steel. AISI 1010, 1015, these are all mild steel, 1010, 1020, 1045, 304 stainless steel, 316 stainless steel. Okay, all alloy steel, cast alloy, cast iron. So there are n number of materials which are being developed, and their database property are actually available in this software. And this database takes huge amount of money because it is not freely available. The company which provide the software, they have collected and they also pays to the company from where on they collected all this property. And that is the reason the softwares are very much costly. Okay, because nothing comes free in this world. Everything is associated with some sort of cost. Okay. The material database and materials library is very costly. And nonlinear materials property you can solve. Highly deformable, low stiffness, any kind of rubbery material, creep you can do, fatigue you can do. Okay. I think you can just go through these slides. These are basic things being mentioned. If you are selecting the property set from the course library, be aware of the assumption made with this selection. Most of the time there is a lot of constraint or the database is not been updated. Okay, so check it before you take into consideration any material database. I'll show you how to take it. The boundary conditions in a finite element software. The boundary conditions are very important. The loads and constant. Okay, because it's a garbage in and garbage out. That is kind of whatever you give in, you get the same result, right? So initial parameters are very essential. If you give wrong information, you get wrong results. The loads, here I'm showing some loads. Loads are used to represent input to the system, can be force, torque, pressure, temperature, acceleration. All kinds of loads can be given. You can see this is how you have to apply loads. You can do linear analysis, dynamic analysis, nonlinear analysis using the boundary conditions. Degree of freedom. I think you know all this. I mean, let me tell you. Linear analysis means actually you have a constant. You have a boundary condition which are assumed constant from the application to the final deformation. If non-linear, then it gradually increases, right? The boundary condition as the displacement increases, the property also changes. So that is called nonlinear analysis, right? Dynamic analysis means the boundary condition vary with time. So with time, the load or the force is going to change. Okay. So these are the things you can play with using the software. The degree of freedom, I already mentioned what are the parameters which are unsolved or which you need to solve. Constraints are used as reaction to the applied load. What are the constraints? They can be translational and rotational constant. Deformation induced by applied force. You can have fixed support. One is like deformation into one on a planar surface, or one a bearing fixture, elastic support. There can be fixed hinges. There can be many constraints. These are all actually available in the software. You can see fixed support, pin support, roller support. These are all constant. A solid phase would always have at least 3 points in contact with the rest of the structure. A solid element should never be constrained by less than 3 points, and only translational degree of freedom must be fixed. So what it says that a minimum 3 points must be connected to the structure, otherwise you cannot get a good result. The choice of boundary condition has a direct impact on the overall accuracy. If you have a work constant, then it will be difficult to solve. And make sure, very important thing I should mention, initially you feel very much excited when you start doing the modeling, but don't do some sort of nonsense. If you over constrain, if you apply a lot of over constraint, then ultimately the software will not solve, because it is not human, it's software. Whatever you give, it try to solve. If you give wrong information, it will show that the parameters are wrong. Okay, you will not be able to solve. So go by the logic, go by the physics of the problem. Okay, don't do some sort of stupidity. If you do some stupidity, then it will not be able to solve the problem. And I'm showing here some chair. We have some patches, the 4 patches here, and applying some sort of load. I mean, you can go through the slides. Some constants are here, and then actually it's trying to show the application of legs are fixed. Then you apply load, okay, and then how is the deformation? These are some fixed restraint, okay, because there are the legs of the chairs are being fixed. So this is how you apply the stress and then deformation, fixed leg, in-plane rotation. These are actually showing the results. If you apply load, and then how it will be, how it is going to change. Okay. This is displacement. One leg is restrained in XYZ, one in XY, another in YZ. All kinds of deformation problem. You go through this. This is a very, you don't need to solve this. This is just showing. Then finally, summary of the pre-processing. Prepare the model for meshing. So how you do? First you do the geometry. So first you take the geometry, then prepare the model for meshing. Then create the final element mesh. Then add the boundary condition, and then material database. Select the material which you are going to do. By default in ANSYS, the default material is structural steel. You can change it in the material database. Okay. Then it is called final element modeling. So these are initial setup, and then you go to solver. Solver means you apply some sort of load and constant. So you give boundary condition, right? But then you go to solver and then you apply some constant, and then you solve. Okay. Post processing, review the boundary condition, review load and magnitude in it, and review mesh density and quality, and then you solve it. This is the block diagram. Pre-processing, solving, post-processing. You can see maximum is pre-processing. First is material, assign load constant, mesh, generate the mesh, review the mesh, then output the solver, then solve it in the solving, and then the result you get in the post-processing. So these are the very two basic things. In it, the most of the things involved is the pre-processing or the setting up the problem, right? Solving and post-processing is very easy. Last point is final element analysis makes a good engineer great and a bad engineer dangerous. Why I am saying this? Computer only understand your language or the input language or input parameters you give. So if you play with it, it will also play with you, and it will create your headache, and it's going to give you a nightmare. Okay, so better not to play with the software. Go by logic, go by rules. Follow the basic standard parameters, the law, the physics, all the problem related to the physics, and then only you will be able to learn the things. Okay. Thank you.